Okay, so that might be on YouTube's side and not XSplit, because I was about to absolutely go off on XSplit. Can you guys hear me okay? Yeah, let me know how you're doing, but we'll go ahead and do the general stuff. Hey guys, welcome to the Lore Reloaded. I am your host, Lore Reloaded, always here to have some fun. Hey, if you're watching this video on demand, you know exactly how this works. I'm going to throw some things at you to check out, and then I'm going to say hi to a couple people, then we're just going to get into it. No sound. No sound at all. Loaded, always here to have some. All right, how about now? Do you hear sound now? Yeah, I know I'm live. All right, should be going on. I'm not even going to do the intro. I'm just going to go with it. Sound should be good now. How's the sound going? Hold on. It shouldn't be good now. Yeah, I know I'm live. All right, should be going on. I'm not even. Yeah, sorry guys. I thought that it was XSplit, and I was about to come on here and talk to you about how XSplit sucks. But I think it might have been YouTube. I don't know. I'll check that out later. All right, so what we're going to do today is we're going to actually talk about my video that I recently did with Janeway. You guys seem really very interested in this. This was something that came up. I kind of got a little cocky. I had been doing so well with CBS that I thought maybe I could show some of their clips. Now, what I figured is that they would just demonetize, that CBS would demonetize, and they take all the money from the video. And while I don't agree with it, it's under fair use. I was going to take the hit because I thought that it was important that you guys saw the videos. But that didn't work. So I gave you guys the edited copy. I challenged it, so we'll see what they're doing. But beyond that, let's go ahead and just get into it. I'm going to look at the comments on the video, plus what you guys talk about, and wherever we want to go from there. But while I'm here, I got to say, the right gamers, what is going up? Disappointed Optimist, always fun to see you. Sinbad, haven't talked in a while. Glad to see you, buddy. Daniel TD Bodie in the house. Never a good stream unless Jonathan Stevie is here. So let's go ahead and break it down. So I am of the opinion that Janeway was in the wrong to kill, and that's what she did. We can argue if she murdered, but she definitively killed Tuvix. And I went through my points of justification, why I thought and why I still think that this was a bad idea. And Sinbad, that's going to be warning number one. Let's first off never say that people deserve a shooting. And let's just not even get into that. So I want to know what's your guys' opinion on Janeway and her actions when it comes to Tuvix. And you know, again, I really think that Janeway was completely and utterly in the wrong here. There's absolutely no justification in my point of view when you look at it all in context. And I'm going to start going through some of the comments. I'm going to respond to them at a later point, but I'm going to go through some of the comments, and then we'll look over here. If you guys have anything you want to say about it, any counters, then let's go with it. So, for instance, I agree with Janeway. Neither Tuvok or Neelix consented to being merged and losing their individual lives. They were two very distinct and polar opposite characters that, due to a malfunction, became parts of each other, but none of either. In my opinion, Janeway restored the natural progression of two naturally occurring beings at the expense of one artificially created and unintentionally being. Correcting a mistake is extremely rarely a mistake in and of itself. So I'm gonna respond to that. This is gonna be the last time. Let's get off of the shooting at YouTube headquarters. I'm gonna start outright banning people. Um, so to specifically address that point of view, uh, and I really think that I did in the video. So here's what confuses me with this. Uh, here's what confuses me with this. We know that both Tuvok and Neelix would give their lives, at least according to Janeway. Neelix, I don't know. I think probably late Voyager season Neelix would. Maybe even now. Tuvok, definitively, right? And basically what they're doing is they're giving their lives so that this person can live. I see no difference in this specific situation and say Neelix and Tuvok deciding to jump in front of a bullet for Tuvix. I don't see how those are any different. Also, when you look at what they would want, we don't know, obviously. But if they're willing to sacrifice themselves in an active situation like that, why wouldn't they be willing to in a passive situation? That just doesn't hold water for me. And if we're going to say that they're boisterous, they're self-sacrificing, well, this would be a sacrifice. Nick Oakley, no problem, Laura. Sorry, didn't know what happened. Back to the topic at hand. Yeah, I'm sorry, man. I'm frustrated. It's been a bad day when it comes to YouTube for me. I didn't mean to go off. And Sinbad, I love you. If you're still watching, I hope I didn't dissuade you. I love you, buddy. But the shooting at YouTube, let's just get off of that for right now. The more I think about it, I do think Neelix would give his life in the writing, at least. I don't know, maybe if it would be in character. And a lot of people have tried to justify and say, well, they're not really dead. And even Tuvix tried to do that. And I would say that it's as close to death as you can get and not be dead. So it is effectively dead. It is yeah, for all intents and purposes it is dead. I don't even think that's a good argument, but I think that they would sacrifice themselves. Now, something that I'm seeing coming up a lot, and where was it? So the Iron Wolverine says 2 is greater than 1. All right, so let's talk about that. Let's talk about this being let's talk about the many and the one in the proverb by the Vulcans, right? Lore, could you say this is Janeway's Kobayashi Maru? Yes, I would say that, Nick Oakley. I would definitely say that. There's not a win here. There's no way to win. But let's look at how many people are going to be helped versus how many people not. So when you look at it from a base standard, you have 2 and you have 1. Sure, 2 people have died for 1 person's life. Let's look at that 1 person, though. This person is better at security and better at tactical. Laughable Larry, $5, saying you rock. Thanks, brother. As you guys know, the best way to, well, not the best way, but one of the ways to help out the channel is to either become a sponsor, patreon.com/Lore Reloaded, or to do super chats. So, again, 2 for 1. So 2 lives were sacrificed for 1. Let's look at the 1. The 1 life is better at tactical, better at security, able to better identify issues, better to fix things in a quicker way, right? So, yeah, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. So this is a better security and tactical officer. Overall, that's going to better assist the crew when you're coming up against enemy hostiles and against ships that can destroy you. You want the best security personnel you can. So we have a better security officer than the one we lost. Now, let's take a look at the the other, the cooking piece to it, the morale officer, or whatever we want to call Neelix. By Janeway's own admission, Neelix, or not Neelix, but Tuvix is a better cook than Neelix. He better handles the galley. He is an extremely good cook, and he seems to be able to better interact and have better morale for when he's interacting with people. All of this is from the episode. So I said it in my video, he comes off as a Mary Sue or a Gary Stu or a Michael Sue is what we call it on the channel. And he can there's nothing he really can't do. So we have a better tactical officer. We have a better morale officer. We lost 2 officers, but these 2 officers do inferior work and can't assist the 100-some people that are in the Intrepid, as well as this one person. This one person better fits the ship, better assists everyone on the ship than those 2 people. So if you want to go with this whole you lose 2 officers and only gain 1 person, then let's have that discussion. Let's have that uncomfortable discussion, because the crew of Voyager would be much, much better off had they kept Tuvix and not killed him. Disappointed Optimist, helping out the channel, always appreciated. Janeway acts like a common Vidian, killing 1 person without their consent to save the lives of her own people. Yeah, I think it was you that commented on the channel, and I didn't think about that, but that does have somewhat of a Vidian aspect to it. I mean, it's indirect and it's kind of around, but yeah, I don't think there's any difference between the Vidians doing what they did to save their people and her doing what she did, right? It's definitive. It's something I'm going to think about, and if I do an update, I will definitely include that. The needs of the mini line doesn't really apply. This is a question of rights more than needs, says General User. By the way, welcome, General User. Always fun to have you here. Darren Wagner, I didn't say hello to you. Welcome here, buddy. I agree. I don't think the needs of the mini apply here. But so many people are saying 2 for 1. So many people are using that as a justification, and it simply doesn't hold water. And for me, and if you guys want to debate this, I'm completely up for that. But I don't think it holds water, because I'm just going to point out how this is a better option for the 100-plus crew. The reason Janeway couldn't keep Tuvix is because the actors had contracts. That is true. I would agree with that, but we're trying to justify this in canon, right? When compared to Riker, if they recovered the double right when it happened, they would have just, like Janeway, ended up doing. The only difference was how much time passed, making 2 separate people. I said this beforehand. Imperious Gaming, I'm going to answer your question. But I said this beforehand. And I'll say it again. Tuvix was always a person. Now, if they were able to fix it almost immediately, even Tuvix would have said, okay, let's do this. But when Tuvix occurred, he became a person. He became a individual. He became sentient. He became distinct. He became new life. And so he has every right to live. My problem with the Riker dichotomy... Now, they would have fixed it instantly and we wouldn't have had a show. My problem with the Riker issue is that if they were to create a double, they're creating new life just to destroy it. And I don't know that I have any better opinion of that than just killing him straight out. It's good because you're at least keeping a person. The only way I could see that it would work and be well is if they did the experiment, or they did the duplication, and at the same time, so they do it to duplicate, the second Tuvix appears, and then instantly what's still in the buffer is then rearranged into them. So there's no new Tuvix. So you don't have 2 Tuvixes to do this to, right? Because that's no better than cloning a human and then doing the same thing with the Vidians. Neelix and Tuvok were already... Laughable Larry, again, helping out the channel. Neelix and Tuvok were already dead. Tuvix should have lived. I agree. I think for all intents and purposes, they were dead. I don't think you can necessarily get, around that. I think that they would give their lives, even indirectly. So if they were to die, and they didn't know at the time that their death would save one person, I think that if you asked them a hypothetical, if you came up to Tuvok and Neelix and said, hey, if you were to die, and it saved one person, but you would never know about it, would you still die? Would you still be okay with that? Would you give your life? I think they'd say yes. Janeway definitively says they would say yes. Janeway, in that clip, says they would sacrifice themselves for someone else. Janeway is 100% behind that. I'm of the same opinion. Nathaniel Shade, as always, helping out the channel with a super chat. Hey, sorry I'm late. I'm happy I can actually catch a live stream at least. Welcome, buddy. I do morning live chats too, so that is better for you. And I agree that it was wrong to kill Tuvix. I know it doesn't count, but Transporter Copyman, why not even try that? Wow, it's funny. I didn't see that when I was answering. But, I guess it's the best of the worst, but if you create a duplicate and then you do what you did to the duplicate, it's no better than doing it to the original. Because if we're going to do that, why don't we just clone people for their organs? It's effectively the same thing. The Right Gamers, always awesome to see you guys here. I haven't seen your videos. Have you guys been doing stuff? I mean, I've been busy, but yeah, I need to go and take a look. What's your most recent video? I like listening to you guys in the background. $5 from the Right Gamers. Neelix and Tuvok died in that accident. Tuvix sought freedom and had a distinct personality. He had rights as an individual to self-determination. So, here's the thing. Let's take... what was it? When Data was on trial and they wanted to disassemble him. And Picard defended him. Tuvix reaches all of the requirements that Picard had for being alive. He had all the rights under Starfleet and Federation regulations. Arguably a Federation citizen. He was born of a Federation citizen, so he would have been a Federation citizen. This is the Kobayashi Maru for Janeway. There is no good fix for this, right? There's nothing she can do that is a win. And I will say that while I do think that she killed someone in cold blood, and I do think that she murdered them, and it was one of the most horrific things that she'd ever done, I do understand it. In her position, given what she's in, I question if I wouldn't have done the same thing. And that's me being honest. I can sit here and set judgment on Janeway all day. But just because I can see it's wrong, I can say it's wrong, I can say she made the wrong choice. With human emotion, if I have been with... It's 2 years now, right? Tuvok, at least in the dialogue, is her right-hand man, like one of her best friends. Just someone she always relies on. Being emotionally attached to Tuvok, and then justifying it to yourself that he has a family, that he has people that love him, just finding any reason. And a lot of people like to say that I attack Janeway and all this stuff. I think Janeway's horrifically written. I have said Janeway has done some good stuff. And I love Kate Mulgrew. But Janeway is human here. I do believe that even though this was horrific on her side, this isn't without consequence, and it's something she took very seriously. And she doesn't always do that, by the way. She will sacrifice lives without even caring in some episodes. Someone else brought something else out, and I'm definitely going to read your comments and everything, but I'm just kind of getting all out here. I barely think better of her crew. I think Riker, or not Riker. Wow, I think Chakotay. I think Paris. The Doctor, even. They're barely better than her, and that's only because they didn't pull the trigger. And the Doctor, in my opinion, is somewhat hypocritical in that he's like, I'm not going to take a life, but I'm going to sit back and let you do it. There's not much better in that, you know? Yeah. Again, the video is based on the person who pulled the trigger. But I wish that this hadn't been just a one-off. I wish that we had seen this a couple of episodes, or even episodes in the future, that people regretted this, that people remembered this. Jay Spence against the principles of the Federation, though. Yeah, I agree. If you're talking about what they did to Tuvix being against the principles of the Federation, absolutely. Absolutely. Sequist, remember when Picard killed his own assimilated crew, the same crew that risked their lives to save Picard from the Borg? I don't think that's necessarily apples to apples, because he had no way of saving that person. But the dude was asking for help and he killed him. If he didn't kill him, he would have become Borg. Picard has done Picard has done things I disagree with, horrific things. I think Sisko is on par with Janeway when it comes to this, because what he did to the Maquis was absolutely unacceptable. Daniel Schott, the Enterprise episode with Trip Clone had some similarities as well. Trip's clone had this one personality and was a friend to the crew. Yeah, maybe you brought that one up. Maybe you were the one, because someone else brought that up. And that's a good point, and I'm trying to remember in that episode, did the Trip clone ultimately decide to give his life, though? Did the Trip clone agree to it, or did they do it to him forcefully? If they did it to him forcefully, it's as horrific. I think that's horrific too. Now, I more blame the Doctor than I do Archer, if I remember that episode correctly, and I could be remembering it wrong. But I think the Doctor knew that the clone wasn't going to survive, and Archer thought he might have a chance. The Doctor, I think, would be horrific in that, because he grew someone that he knew was going to die. If Archer knew about it, that is pretty bad too. I mean, all of this is good moral quandaries. I do like the fact that I'm having to sit here and think about it and think, well, they literally grew a clone that's going to die to save someone else. Is that okay? And if that's okay, how is it different? And that's why I like talking to you guys. Okay, no Stripe 361. I shouldn't allow that, but I'm going to. But that's close. That's on the edge, buddy. Trip's clone agreed to it only because he had... Yeah, I mean... Yeah. Tuvix would have eventually gone insane having two personalities and memories crammed together. Possibly. What if they were conjoined temporarily and Tuvix head can only talk, but he has dementia, but can develop a new personality? I don't know what you're asking me there. The question becomes, though, okay, so I've sat here and I said, Janeway is a horrible person for doing this. She's horrific. She's a murderer. She's cold-blooded. How would I handle it? well, before I do that, someone asked, yes, I'll do a geek breakdown or a live stream where I talk about how dark the show gets. Sorry, I just remembered I needed to answer that. How would I have handled it? See, here's the thing. It doesn't seem like they looked for options on how to keep Tuvix alive. Once Tuvix says, I want to live, it doesn't seem like they explored the options there. So if they didn't, that would be the first thing I would do. I would explore, is there a way to keep Tuvix alive and still get what we want, right? Nick Oakley, hey Laura, I sent you a couple of bucks. Thanks, buddy. Always helps out. Appreciate that. Now, let's assume that they did do research and they couldn't for whatever reason. The Riker thing wouldn't have worked and it just all happened off screen. I would have, in the moment as Janeway, I said this before, I could see me emotionally saying that I would do to Tuvix what happened. Now, assuming that I was able to look at it like I am right now, a little more, I would say, logical, I probably would have let Tuvix live because it's the right thing to do. And I would have pushed the crew to accept the fact Tuvix not wanting to die and sacrifice himself is not a bad thing. And the fact that he talks about and that we see it somewhat, that he is judged is symptomatic of Starfleet wrongthink. And so, as captain, I would have pushed for him to be more accepted, for it to be okay for him not wanting to give his life. And I think that the crew would have ultimately come around to that. Interesting thing someone else brought up. The mind disease that Tuvok had. Is it possible? Because remember, there were 3 pieces of DNA that had mixed together. We had the flower, we had Tuvok, and we had Neelix. We only ever separated 2. So if we have both Tuvok and Neelix, and they both have flower DNA in them, did that cause the dementia we see in Tuvok? I think that would be pretty interesting. Dustin Echoes, that's an interesting idea. Put a copy of his mind into a hologram. Yeah, I didn't even think about that. And they have that ability too. So you just upload his memories, his thoughts, who he is, make him a hologram, and put him in sickbay or give him the opportunity. But I mean, even then, you're still killing a person, and then that comes down to, does a soul exist, right? All right, so we're going to make you a hologram, and we're going to kill you. You'll live on, but the biological you, who you are, goes away. And is that okay? I don't know. It's better than nothing, right? But I can't say that that's necessarily right or the good thing to do. Someone said, well, would you let him live if it was your wife? Nick Oakley, got to run, got to drive the semi again, 9 hours. Talk to you later, Nick. If you merged your wife, my wife, well, that's emotional. That's going back to being Janeway. Obviously, I don't want that person to live if my wife is gone. But that doesn't make it right or wrong, right? There's a lot of things that I would possibly do to save my wife that isn't necessarily right, you know? Let's see. Someone said, if the 2 halves of Kirk could have been kept alive in the original series, The Enemy Within, would you have preferred keeping them separate than getting the whole Kirk back? I'd have to rewatch that episode to better understand. If I remember that episode, it wasn't a whole person. It wasn't an individual being. It was two halves. Now, if it was a distinct and individual person, then yeah. I mean, at that point, we haven't... It's basically the Riker thing all over again, right? So, yeah. I would say keep him if it's a distinct person, but in that episode, my understanding is it wasn't, if I remember right. They already kill you in the transporter, so uploading to a computer would be equivalent. Yeah, I mean, the more I look at transporters, the more I think that it's basically killing a person. It has to be. with all the transporter accidents that could happen. Michael Sue says it's 2-for-1. It was a transporter accident that was reversed to save 2 lives. I've already talked about this, and if you've been watching all the time, I'm going to be really briefly about really brief. But Michael Sue, if we want to do the numbers game, that one was superior than the 2 in every way. You had a better security, a better tactical officer, someone who could fix issues easier, faster, and more effectively, and give better advice to Janeway. You had a better morale officer, made people happier. You also had a better cook. By sacrificing 2 people, you have 1 person who could help the 100+ people. The 100+ people are weaker and have a better chance of dying because you decided to save 2 people versus just keeping the 1. If it's a numbers game, Tuvix wins hands down. I think it could be seen logically interpreted that Tuvix crying he did not want to die was actually Tuvok and Neelix both speaking through the mouth of Tuvix. It's possible. I don't know that I would make that argument. I think Tuvok and Neelix are effectively dead. I think for all intents and purposes they're gone. But then it becomes what their wants would be, and we've discussed that. I think they'd want Tuvix to live. CGP Grey, someone I watch, has a bit of a problem. I think it's CG. No, I'm not going to say that because I don't know if it's him. CGP Grey did a video on Transporter as a suicide box. It was wonderfully done. A hologram can't leave the ship, so that person would have different experiences than someone who can. Perhaps the question we should be asking is, would Chakotay have been the better captain versus Janeway? I don't think so, and I think it would have been a good dichotomy for him to try to be captain and fail. Chakotay is an excellent diplomat and a good tactician, but I don't know that he would have made a good captain. I think Janeway was a much better captain than him, while being a weaker diplomat and a weaker tactician, which is why they do complement each other in that way. Darren Wagner, is this episode considered good because it's so hard to come down on one side or the other? No, just because an episode gives you a quandary, I don't think that makes it good. And I don't know that I consider the episode good either. You put the characters into a situation and have them act in a way that is going to be I don't know. I don't think that we can explore it. It wasn't explored well enough in order for it to be good. I would have liked to see more to it. Yeah. Let's see. So Blue Eyes 1502, this is going back, taking a look at the video or episode itself. Tuvok was married, though, and had kids. Neelix was dating Kes. Besides, 2 bodies are better than 1. I've already addressed that. But Tuvok was married and had kids. Neelix was dating Kes. Now, we see through Kes what was the pain that she was going through. And I somewhat like her final interaction with Janeway, where she goes to Janeway and she's crying, saying she misses Neelix, but Tuvix shouldn't die. And I thought that was put well together. However, when it comes to Tuvok's family, I think that being Vulcans, they would understand the logic of Tuvok wanting to sacrifice himself and not wanting Tuvix dead. I think they'd understand the logic of how Tuvix helped the crew out more. And I think they'd understand the logic of not doing something that could fail and then having the 2 actors, right? Or having having them all dead. I think they understand the logic there. Kes was coming around to it. She was coping and going through grief pretty well until she was told that she could have him back. So I don't think that's a good enough reason. Binster, fast forward 2 seasons and Kes dumps Neelix. Yeah, that's true. They botched that pretty horrifically. Yeah, they did a bad job with that. Uh, if it had been Harry Kim and Neelix, you better bet Janeway would have had to let Harlix live. Yeah, well, no, that's not true. If it had been Harry Kim and anybody else, doesn't matter who else, she would have split them up immediately because she needs her whipping boy. If she's not torturing Harry Kim in some way or some fashion, or ensuring that he'll never get command, it's not a good day for her. So she would have been more. She wouldn't have even talked to whoever Harry Kim the thing would have. She would have just had him beamed without even talking to him. Would it have been better if Tuvix episode was a two-part? I think so. I think there's a lot to explore here. So here's what I would have done. I tell you, if I was writing the episode. Now, obviously, this is all looking into the past, right? And this is all just... I'm able to talk about it after seeing it. But I would have made it a two-parter, and here's what would happen. For all intents and purposes, almost everything you see in the original episode occurs. Up to and including what Janeway does to Tuvix. However, here's what happens. She goes to do the beaming. There's an issue. They have to tech their way out of this. And then they finally restore it, but it fails, and you still have Tuvix. And now you have Janeway, who tried to murder him, and then the crew, who didn't stop her from trying to murder him, and him. And the second part of this would be the exploration of him wanting to live and how much they were willing to kill him to get the two people back. And I would have loved to write an episode with that. Especially the dynamics between Kes... I would keep the dynamics where they were for the most part. I would keep the dynamics with Tuvix, Janeway, and Kes, and the character growth for all three. Nate Watson, given $5. By the way, it's always a great way to help the channel. We saw that Tuvok and Janeway were close friends in the pilot in the time travel episode. Did that compromise Janeway's decision further? Yeah, I talked about this a little bit earlier, Nate. Yes. I think that's one of the main reasons she did it. I think that if this had been two random crew members that she rarely saw, or didn't see as much, or didn't have a connection like Tuvok, she would have been a lot more apt to let him stay. And obviously you wouldn't have had the contract, so it would have happened there. Going back to what I was talking about, the second episode, because you guys seem to like that. So in the second episode, you'd have interactions of the full crew, but again, the focus would be Janeway, it would be Cass, and it would be Tuvix. And I'd probably have Tuvix at the end give his life for them, realizing what Tuvok and Neelix means to everyone, and his character arc growing into becoming self-sacrificing. So in the first episode, we see that he's not willing to give his life, that he doesn't want to sacrifice. And again, wanting to be alive and not sacrificing yourself is not necessarily a bad thing. The movies will tell you different, but wanting to save yourself is not necessarily cowardice. It's dependent, obviously, but it's not necessarily cowardice. And then in the second episode, he goes through and interacts with all these people who basically wanted him dead, and comes to the conclusion and understands that sacrificing himself would do so much more for the crew of 100-some people, that 100-some people would be enriched by his death, and then accepting it. Scott Abbey, do you think that Tuvix was the canary in the coal mine incident with Janeway, foreshadowing the dark lengths that she would go to later in the series? I think it was a symptom of her being a tragic hero. I want to say that there was already clues before this, but definitely it showed, and a lot of people said this. Her promise, what she wanted to do, was to get everybody on that crew back alive. And so she went to those lengths to do that. And it's symptomatic of that she's willing to sacrifice one person. And she does much worse in Endgame when she sacrifices the lives of children and the Federation, basically all of the Alpha Quadrant, to save a dozen people. So I say it's symptomatic. I don't know if it's the first one, but if it is, then yeah, I think it's a good way to go. Honestly, she is written as a tragic character, no matter how many ways you slice it. They just, when it comes to that, it is done so well that it almost makes me believe that it was done on purpose. Ben Harding, an absolute hero, woke up at 4:30 a.m. to watch the lore stream. I'm glad I didn't quit when it seemed like it wasn't working. Glad you're here, buddy. I wish when either Tuvok or Neelix were brought back, I wish one or both disagreed with what Janeway did, just to see the dilemma for Janeway. Yeah, you know, I would have loved to seen that. I would have loved to seen them either disagree with her or to give justification on why she was right. I wish we had gotten their opinion. I wish we'd gotten how they felt about it. I feel like the writers would have made them justify Janeway and made Janeway right. But assuming that the writers wouldn't have tried to justify them in that way, it would have been interesting to see how Tuvok looked at it logically. By the way, Nathaniel Shade, thank you so much for giving. It's stuff like that that keeps us... There's actually a convention going in Nashville, Heroes and Villains, and I'm seeing if I can get a pass to go there. And if you're near the Nashville area and you want to hang out, and I'm able to go, definitely would love to hang out with anyone who'd want to. Why not enrich the whole crew by melding most of them together and half the crew in order to make better crew members better able to get back home? I'll take Snark for 30, but let me... So, obviously, we don't want to meld half the crew. That'd be wrong. That there's personal rights there. This was an accident. We're dealing with something that happened that we can't change. How do we impact and look at that? It's not apples to apples, in my opinion. If this had been forced on Tuvok and Neelix, that's completely different. And then I think even Tuvix's opinion on the matter isn't as great. Janeway is a plot hole. She said, "I don't have the freedom to kill you to save another. My culture finds that to be reprehensible, an entirely unacceptable act in Voyager Phage." Ha! And Phage would be one of the ones where I think that she should have. That's another thing I disagree with. I would have definitely killed him. Definitely, she's noble. She's very noble in that. But, yeah. Nicholas Tracek, I was serious. Well, I answered it seriously. So I apologize for the snark thing. Hey, Laura, quick question. If you were able to get to Comic-Con, would you head to Quebec City Comic-Con? It wouldn't be the cheapest thing, but I mean, if I was able to do it and have everything paid for, sure. I'd love to go to Canada. It'd be fun. Laura Reloaded, why not just clone both Tuvok and Neelix from the DNA and transfer their minds and memories into their clones' bodies and keep Tuvix? You know, I don't hate that. I think that is the best of the worst. I don't hate that at all. Huh. All right. How would Janeway look at Tuvix knowing he's restricting Tuvok and Neelix's life? See, that's another interesting thing we could have looked at in the second episode. That she feels so guilty about trying to kill him and it failing. And then every time she looks at him, she only ever sees Tuvok. And she can't get away from that. And kind of like Cass, except a different reason, she grows to hate Tuvix. And he hasn't even done anything wrong. You know? I don't hate that. I don't hate that as a concept. Where'd you guys go? God, man, I am having such issues. I swear to God. The minds and memories are merged, so I don't think you can get the memories from Tuvok and Neelix separated from Tuvix. But what we do know, Benster, is that holograms can be created that almost are 100% accurate re-representation. So you could just take it from the computer and have basically as close a facsimile as you can get. Why don't the Vidians try to steal Borg tech or get assimilated to allow the Borg to cure the phage? I don't think the Vidians are close enough to Borg space. I think they might try that afterwards. Yeah, I mean, if I'm ever in Quebec, Sinbad, let's hang out. Or if you're ever in the States. Why not put Tuvix in the transporter, but use the pattern to reproduce all three of them? Yeah, we've talked about that. I mean, it is possible to try that. It's just, for whatever reason, it couldn't be done, and we just have to assume that Tech. But yeah, it would be better to clone Tuvix, as Tuvix was still relatively new. Yeah, but you still have the same issue. If Tuvix is cloned, then you have two distinct individuals, and you're killing one. All right, guys, I think we're going to end this pretty shortly. One thing that came up that really annoyed me, and I had already was having issues with CBS, so I wasn't in the best mood. I didn't respond to it the best way I should have. Someone was trying to say that because Tuvix would have fixed some of the issues with Tuvok and Neelix from a medical level. And that was just throwaway more than anything else. It's just to say, hey, and it wasn't a make it or break it. It was just something I added. It was a throwaway comment or a throwaway reason. But they were saying I was trying to get close to eugenics by saying that Tuvix wouldn't have the issues Tuvok and Neelix had. That is the dumbest thing I ever... it even irritates me right now thinking about it. It's obviously not eugenics. I'm not promoting having healthy people over sick people or killing sick people. It's just when you look at everything from a logical standpoint, that is one of the things to impact. But yeah, Nate Watson in the house. I wonder how biological viable Tuvix was. They had completely different blood chemistry, and this combined two mammals and a plant. He probably would have died after a month. Yeah, that's assuming. I mean, they said, the doctor says he's incredibly healthy. Though how the doctor would know that, since this is a completely new life, I have no idea. But he says he's healthy. So we can assume that, based on what they said, he would have survived and he would have lived. Lore and Anti-Trekker merge. For the longest time, we had channels together and ran channels together. Hey, Lore, consider this. If Voyager had been really resource limited, Janeway would have had to keep Tuvix, one crewman that can do two jobs with half of the food and energy costs. Yeah, and I mean, what if they didn't have the energy to do it? It's funny how starved they are for resources all the time, and yet have all this energy to do all this stuff. Admiral Alexander in the house. Perhaps a video on when Federation law applies and when it does not apply. Morality versus legality. Yeah, that'd be kind of vague, though, because we don't know too much about the Federation and Starfleet legal system. At Caravaggio 2012 asking a good question. How do you compare this to DS9 episode with the cloned O'Brien? Neat and fun fact on that. They actually wanted to have O'Brien to always be a sleeper, even in TNG. And then ultimately it was found out that he was a sleeper agent. And they decided not to go with that because it's an absolutely idiotic plan that would have destroyed the character. And I'm glad they didn't. I think that if they had stopped O'Brien and not killed him, then the cloned O'Brien would have had a distinct and was a distinct individual that should have survived and been given rights and should have went through the psychological requirements to remove him, remove all that. He was a person. He was no different from Thomas Riker. What would Tuvok or Chakotay do in Janeway's position if Janeway and Chakotay or Janeway and Tuvok were merged into one being, same way as Tuvix? I think Tuvok would have not brought them different. What's up, Admiral Saval? I don't think Tuvok would have done it. I don't think Tuvok would have killed the person in cold blood. And I honestly don't think Chakotay would have either. Chakotay might have. The Chakotay Janeway love romantic vibe they had. Yeah. Chakotay might have been compromised enough to do it. Visho Divas, you have actually missed that argument when I've blown it out of the water at least 3 times now. The upside is that Tuvix would have helped the crew more than Tuvok and Neelix. He was superior to both in every way. So if it's a numbers game, Tuvix doesn't eat as much, takes less energy, is more efficient, and better at being a security and tactical and morale officer than the other two. There's no reason not to keep him. That would have been better for the many versus the few. The funny thing is, Odo states in DS9 that clones have rights too. They do. So killing a clone is still killing a person. It's true. And subject to the law. So sometimes clones have rights, and other times they do not. I don't know any time that a clone hasn't had a right, Binster. I don't think that they would have argued that Tuvix had... Tuvix was a clone. Chakotay had less morals. You know, Chakotay, I disagree. I think Chakotay was more moral beginning in Season 2. And then moving on forward, especially when we see how he interacts with the Equinox. I think Chakotay was Janeway's center as a tragic character. Isn't the Tuvix episode basically a trolley problem in Star Trek form, where Janeway does nothing, then 2 people die and 1 survive, but her actions result in saving 2 people by killing another? I just said it less than 4 or 5 minutes ago, why that's wrong. To make your trolley example effective, it would be her letting 2 people die to save 1 person, which ultimately would help over 100 more, or letting 1 person die to save 2 people and hurting or making weaker the 100 people. I do think they were resource starved, says Jimmy 1985. They were only resource starved when the plot had it. They could do all kinds of stuff if the plot needed them to. I thought my editor was here. He's not. Admiral Alexander, no answer, I see. No matter. Anyway, I'm thinking of some questions. Also, I've been a sub since, I don't know which vid, but I watched them all. This is the first stream I've been in. Well, welcome, Admiral Alexander. I'll tell you the same thing I tell to everyone who says that I can't answer. I get comments, especially I got 90 people watching. Generally, comments come in at least 1 a second or 1 every 3 seconds. I can't answer everybody. I try to do the best I can. I'm not saying that you have to do this. If you want to guarantee that I'll answer your question, then do a super chat. I'm not pushing you towards that. That's just the only guarantee of me addressing it. Beyond that, if you have a question, do @LoreReloaded or @LoreSpaceReloaded. Then it pops up as a special yellow and orange marker for me and stands out. I try to answer everyone. I just can't. There's 90 people watching. A comment every 3 seconds. I talk to as many people as I can. Speaking of Equinox, what would happen if Voyager had been the same situation with a Galaxy or Nebula class being found in the Gamma Quadrant? Unlike the Equinox, those actually have combat capabilities a lot better. So I think that it would have changed what she wanted to do with the Equinox, right? But Um, I I don't think it would have changed her strategy because in the Equinox, what happened? You can really Equinox. You want to talk about canary in the coal mine? Equinox was huge, an absolute huge uh, marker for her going insane, and or her slowly, going into obscurity and what's happening. So, yeah, I mean, I'm going to do an Equinox thing by itself. That's an entire another episode and live stream. Admiral Alexander, I can't super chat, but understood. That's fine. I don't want people to get money they don't have, especially if they can't afford it. Or if you can't, that's fine. I understand. Then do @lore reloaded. When you talk to me, hit @lore reloaded. Look at the Dark Instar, how he did it or she did it. @lore reloaded. Do that. I will do everything I can to answer your question. 90 people, like or dislike, help lore grow. Nathaniel Shade, right up there. Completely agree with you. And by the way, again, I don't care if you guys like or dislike it. 95 dislikes. Do it. I'm so glad they never bothered showing the Enterprise D refueling every few episodes like the Voyager. Yeah. At Lore Reloaded, sucks to see a lovely supernova class like the Equinox being destroyed. I roleplay aboard the USS Maxwell in United Federation Starfleet on Second Life, and that class grew on me. That's cool. I didn't know Second Life had that. I don't like what Janeway did with the Equinox. I don't like the destruction of the Equinox. I wish they could have found a way to take the Equinox with them. I don't know. I think that she had a chance to stop the battle, and she didn't. Admiral Alexander, do you have a gaming channel? I don't, but what I do have is a Twitch, which I'm going to start streaming to almost every day. Twitch.tv/lore reloaded. I've actually got a lot of cool things coming, a lot of things done. I've, in fact, even bought a Elgato Stream Deck, and I've bought a lot of programs that go with Twitch, and I'm going to hit that pretty hard. The progression of life, accidental or not, has rights. Why not hyper-evolve Tom Paris and Janeway then? Why not the hyper-evolved Tom Paris and Janeway then? So are you talking about the when they evolved, which, by the way, that's not how evolution works. Rick Berman doesn't know how to write. But are you talking about when they became salamanders or whatever? That's somewhat of a different situation. First off, the salamanders don't have sentience. They don't have the ability they don't have the ability to decide if they want to live or not. Also, unlike Tuvix, which was superior to Tuvok and Neelix, they still need Paris and Janeway. And I think the fact the aliens don't fall under sentient beings, and that is a key for me. If Tuvix couldn't have passed the requirements that we saw in the court case with Picard, then I think we have a different conversation. At Lauren Chandler, I'm the Janeway defender from your other video, but I'm running out of defense material, so... Well, Lauren, if you still disagree with me, you still think you're right, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, the channel's a conversation. That's why I do this, right? Admiral Saval, haven't you gotten your new rig yet? Yeah, it's actually on its way. Anthony Duke, shout out to Laura. Woot woot. Nexus, with the Equinox, why not take parts from it so at least for a while they did not have the alien tech? Yeah, they were going to do that. They were going to scuttle this ship. They were going to take everything they could and then destroy it, which makes sense because the Nexus couldn't keep up with Voyager, and Voyager has a better chance of getting home. It's referred to in that episode as a combat vessel. It's definitively better in every way when it comes to withstanding attacks. I wish they could have kept the Nexus, but there's no reason to. Or I wish they could have kept the Equinox, however you say it, but there's no reason to. Wait, do you know what a New Orleans class is? If not, I'll explain. I know what the New Orleans class is, yes. I don't have a deep knowledge of it, but I know what it is. The episode was the worst thing ever. The Warp 10 barrier was ignored by every other series. Yeah, it should have. I mean, Threshold was horrific. There's nothing good about it. All right, guys, we're going to be ending soon, so any other questions? Anything you want to add before we end? By the way, guys, don't forget to check me out at patreon.com/lore reloaded. Not only do you support the channel, but there's additional things that I definitely try to get out there behind the scenes, everything I can do. And I show you, again, it's a way of me talking to you. Check me out at twitter.com/lore reloaded. I talk about a lot more than just lore, though if that's what you want to talk about, we'll talk about it. But I give my opinions. I'm a little more open about what I think going on political wise, stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, absolutely feel free. Also, if you're in the Nashville area, there's a good chance I'll be at the Heroes and Villains convention. That is not a lock. But if I am, definitely let me know via Twitter and we can hang out. And if I get to happen, I'll see if I can include you guys in a couple of conversations I'll be having with people there. Nate Watson, I figured out why the Spore Drive was abandoned. It makes everyone on the ship dysfunctional a-holes, like how the Warp 10 drive made humans element. Yeah, the Spore Drive is a huge plot hole. Admiral Alexander, do I have a Discord? I, in fact, do have a Discord. I'll include it in the description after this. Over 100 people today. A lot of cool things happened. I don't necessarily want to talk about it. But one thing that happened is today we got over 100 people on the Discord. I need to get that more active. Someone asked something else that I wanted to address. Lauren, loving the discussion on Tuvix. What do you think Tuvok or Neelix would have done if they had the option? I feel like each of them would have wanted to get their lives back, maybe. Lauren, I disagree with that. Janeway specifically says they would sacrifice themselves to save others. I think that's at least consistent for Tuvok. Neelix, probably. I think they would have given their lives. And they were. That's effectively what they've done. They're giving their lives with Tuvix. I think that's what they would have went with. I think they want to live, but I think they would have given their lives. Oh wait, the hell is a non-sentient? The next evolutionary step for a sentient being? Says Kyle, I guess. How would Sisko, Kirk, or Picard handle things in the Gamma Quadrant? This comes up quite a bit. Sisko and Kirk, I think, would have been all right. Picard probably would have had some issues. I think Sisko would have been more hardline. I think Sisko would have went with what we would consider the more negative options. Kirk would have probably been near that, but not always. Picard would have gotten everybody killed. All right, guys, I think we're going to end it here. Though, I see, in a battle between a Defiant class versus Voyager, who do you think would win? I don't know. I think the Defiant would get some solid hits in, and definitely is very powerful. Would have caused some damage to the Intrepid. The Intrepid has the most current technology, though. I'll have to think on that one. Sisko is supposed to be the blue-collar captain who makes the sensible decisions. I think he comes off on that. Sisko would punch all the things. Yes, Sisko would punch all of the things. Let me see if there's any other comment I wanted to address in the actual thing itself. Because there was some good ones here. Yeah, Lauren, and everybody, the channel is a discussion. And when I created it, and when I first started, I was like, all right, I don't want to be... So, all the lore channels I saw, every one of them, was a definitive source of knowledge. And they did it exceptionally well. Trek Yards, Space Dock, Lore Runner, was just documentary style. And what I wanted for the channel, I wanted Samuel Cockings referred to me as a commentator who was knowledgeable about Starfleet or about Star Trek, about sci-fi. And I like that because that's what I want to be. I add my own little pizzazz to it. I try to give you some behind the scenes. I come at it from a lore in canon, but it's also my opinion added in there, and it's having fun. Some people have referred to it as the TMZ channel of Trek. I think TMZ can have fun with stuff, so I don't get upset about that. But yeah, it's a conversation. All right, guys, I think we are going to end it there. Now, here comes the fun part, because I'm not completely sure how to stop this. I'm giving you the rank of Commodore and giving you a Defiant class. Well, thank you, Admiral. Admiral Alexander. I don't know what I'm doing with OBS, because I had to use OBS because I thought XSplit was having an issue, but it wasn't. I think all I got to do is hit stop. So we're going to assume that's it, and then I'll work on it on the back end. Guys, I want to thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe. Hit that like button. 41 likes with 90 people watching? Come on. Either like it or dislike it. But again, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next Lore Reloaded.